Welcome to our Bible series. Episode 1, Creation, Adam and Eve. Before there were cities, before there were voices, before even a single footprint pressed into the earth, the world was empty and unformed, wrapped in darkness, with nothing yet to separate sky from water or land from sea. Then light broke through. Not slowly like a sunrise, but all at once, cutting across the dark and drawing the first clear line between day and night. From that moment on, the world began to take shape. Water gathered into wide seas, land rose and held firm, and open space stretched overhead like a ceiling being lifted into place. Green spread across the ground as plants took root, then trees, then forests thick enough to cast shade. The sky filled with movement. Wings skimmed the air. Fish flashed beneath the surface. Animals crossed the land. What had once been silent slowly began to feel alive. It was as if everything was being prepared piece by piece, like a home made ready for someone who hadn't arrived yet. And then, instead of speaking as before, God did something different. He bent down. He reached into the soil itself, the same earth the trees had grown from, and shaped it with his hands, carefully and deliberately, forming not another creature driven only by instinct, but someone meant to think, to choose, to understand. The body lay still in the dust. Then breath filled its lungs. The chest rose, air rushed in, and the man opened his eyes. He didn't wake to danger or struggle. He woke to running water, to trees heavy with fruit, to open space and clean air, to a world that was already ready for him. He was brought into a garden called Eden, a place that felt less like wilderness and more like welcome. Rivers moved through it in branching streams. Fruit hung low from the trees. Shade covered the paths. Everything he needed was already there. His work wasn't survival. It was care. He walked the land, learned its shape, and named the animals as they passed. Each one different, each one alive in its own way. But after a time, something became clear. Every creature had its pair. The man stood alone. The creation of Eve. So God caused him to fall into a deep sleep, and from his own side formed another, not from the ground this time, but from him. Someone like him, yet different. When he woke and saw her, there was no confusion, no distance. He recognized her immediately. Not stranger, not other, his equal. And for the first time, humanity wasn't one voice, but two. They walked the garden together without fear, without shame, without anything to hide. If you had seen them then, you wouldn't have thought about rules or right and wrong. You would have simply thought, this is how life is supposed to be. At the center of the garden stood two trees that looked ordinary enough, yet carried quiet weight. One offered life. The other offered a choice. The only tree that they weren't supposed to touch. They were free to eat from everything else. Only one boundary existed. Just one. Because love that has no choice isn't love at all. For a while, nothing disturbed the peace, until another voice entered the story. The serpent didn't threaten or command. It simply asked a question. Did God really say that you cannot eat from every tree here? Close enough to sound true, twisted just enough to plant doubt. The woman answered, certain at first, but the idea lingered, and the serpent leaned closer. You won't die, it said quietly. God just knows you'll become like him. He doesn't want you to be like him. Suddenly, the fruit looked different. Not just food, opportunity, control, something being kept from them. She reached out and took it. A bite. Then she handed it to the man beside her. He ate too, and instantly something shifted. The world itself hadn't changed. The trees still moved in the wind, the river still ran. But inside them, something broke. For the first time, they felt exposed, aware of themselves in a way that hurt. They covered their skin with leaves, looked away from each other, and when they heard God walking through the garden, the same sound that once meant comfort, they hid behind trees. Like children who knew they had done something they couldn't undo. Then came his voice. "Where are you?" Not angry, not shouting, just searching. The man answered from the shadows, "I was afraid." It was the first time fear had ever spoken in Eden. Truth came out slowly. Excuses followed. Blame passed from one to another, and the cost unfolded. Work would be harder now, the ground less generous, pain sharper, trust fragile. Nothing destroyed, but nothing effortless anymore. Before they left, God replaced their fragile leaf coverings with real garments, something stronger, something that would last. Even now there was care, but they couldn't stay. Not like this. So the garden was closed, the way back guarded, and the two of them stepped out into a wider, harsher world for the first time. The air felt colder, the ground rougher. Home was now behind them. And every human story since that day, every longing, every search, every attempt to rebuild something lost, has carried the memory of that garden, and the quiet hope that one day, the way back might open again.
If you liked this story, join us for episode 2, coming up next in a few days.